Hey, what's going on, everyone? Give me one sec. I'm just going to kind of play around with the sound. Had a little bit of trouble with it last time. Boom. Okay, cool. Okay, so in the Facebook Live today, one thing I wanted to cover, which is like very important because a lot of people seek it like free information online, which is okay because there are a lot of very credible and very knowledgeable experts online that are, guests on podcasts, and they have their own show or their own YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people kind of seek out answers for oftentimes like very complicated health problems through these podcasts. Victor, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Everyone else also in this group, thank you for jumping in. Good to see everyone. And there are a few shortcomings. So I'm going to kind of go over in this live today in terms of like what to be careful for when you're kind of seeking free information online. And that also includes like my information as well. You just have to be careful, and you have to moreover be careful, like not only who you're choosing to listen to for information, but also to make sure you're taking that information within the proper context and able to apply it correctly as well, which is extremely important, because one of the main things is oftentimes, even if you find like a very credible and knowledgeable person online that actually does really know what they're talking about, and that's also like far in between as well. The thing is, it's like this person or this kind of specialist or expert has personally like never actually met you, okay? So they never met you, and they just don't know your specific situation. So they're kind of just talking to like a general audience. And that's why oftentimes, even if they're an expert, even if what they're saying is correct, it's just like very hard to actually apply that knowledge and that expertise within the proper context of what that specific person is going through. Because at the end of the day, and I got this saying from Paul Chek, but nature is like a novelty generator, and I say it often, but nature doesn't create two of literally anything, okay? Even when you look at like the same tree, each individual leaf on that same exact tree is uniquely different, okay? And it's the same exact thing with people as well, okay? Each individual person is uniquely different. There are no two of any type of person. And I'll give you like a quick rundown and example of why that's important, and in terms of like why that's important when listening to advice online through fitness experts or whatever. So I have some notes here, and we're gonna kind of go down in detail, okay? So let's say, and I'll show you just how uniquely different even two people with the same exact problems, the approach, how it needs to be completely different. And if they kind of take information out of context, even when it's from a credible source, and when it's from a credible source and not, understood through a structural, progressive way, like it would be, for example, we're taking like a 4-year course at a university where you start at the foundational level and then kind of work your way up from there, et cetera, et cetera. And that way, the foundation and how to build things on top of that foundation, instead of just taking random bits of information from random people online and then trying to somehow do like a Frankenstein construction of problem solving, where you're taking just random pieces, jamming them together, and then hoping to create like a functional program that will resolve issue ABC, whatever it may be. So here we have two different subjects, okay? And they look exactly the same on the surface. So you have, let's say subject one, we have two subjects, both subjects are 35 years old. Both subjects are 35 years old. Let's just say both have an exact body fat percentage of 25%. Also, both of the subjects actually say they have low back pain. Both of them have low back pain. Let's just say both of them even have the same exact education. They went to the same exact college, had the same exact professors, got the same exact GPA, etc., and have the same exact degree, for example. And let's just say their race is exactly the same, okay? So on the surface, it looks like these two people could be put on the same exact program and experience the same exact results, where sometimes because of dumb luck, it could be the case, but rarely is that the case, okay? Because oftentimes what led these people to the problems they're experiencing of, for example, low back pain and excessive body fat retention could be completely different. You know, the belief systems that led to those problems could be completely different. And because of that, because of what led them to that problem is completely different in their unique circumstance and situation, their approach has to be different as well, okay? So for example, with this person, let's just say subject A, he reported having low back pain. So when you hear things like, oh, I have like low back pain, that's such like a vague diagnosis. It means like close to like absolutely nothing, okay? So even when they say they have like low back pain with radiating symptoms, maybe down the left leg or the right leg, the back of the leg or the front of the leg, it's still like extremely vague, and there needs to be a lot more detail that goes into in terms of like what's causing that pain, okay? So is it like a posterior lateral disc bulge on the left side, on the right side? Is it in, the L4 disc or L5 disc? Or is it maybe coming from the SI joint? Is it maybe coming from like a very, very tight and inflamed piriformis that's pressing on the sciatic nerve, for example? Is that referring then pain back to the low back and they're feeling pain there, but the problem really is in their piriformis, for example? It's usually fairly rare to have like true piriformis syndrome, but it could happen, okay? And the point I'm making is it could be dramatically different. So let's just say also subject one, then when doing like a thorough like mechanical assessment or postural assessment, has like a flat lower back, and he experiences throughout a mechanical assessment, it's determined he has like a posterior lateral disc bulge to the left side, okay? That's pressing on the nerve root, that's causing from time to time sciatica type symptoms or radiating painful symptoms down the back of the leg. But let's say with subject two, okay, which also said he's experiencing like low back pain, which is like a very, very vague diagnosis, okay? He has, in terms of his posture, we determined instead of like a flat lower back, which the first subject had, where the back is extremely flat, which generally isn't good because it hurts the capability of the back to be able to actually bear load. Because naturally the spine has, a bit of lower doses kyphosis and then lower doses again in the lower back. So you got a little bit of curvature in the neck area. It shouldn't be like a flat military neck, for example. A bit of curvature in the mid back, so a bit of kyphosis, but not overly exaggerated, and a bit of curvature, a little bit more lower doses in the lower back. And this kind of spring-like effect, or this kind of like curvature effect, causes like a spring-like effect on the back to be able to, for the back to be able to bear more load in an axial loading capacity, okay? So putting like a barbell on the back of your back, for example, or holding something over your head, for example, as well, okay? And when you have too much flatness, or even too excessive of curvature, like too much kyphosis or too much lower doses, it could cause, a shear stress and lead to injury and stuff of that sort, and just lack of weight-bearing ability in a spine-sparing movement, which kind of degrades the joints and possibly the vertebrae as well over time. So that's with subject one. As you've seen, we're going in a lot more detail of what's actually causing their low back pain, and we'll touch on their fat gain as well. They got a few things going on. And remember, the main thing is on the surface, it looked like these two subjects were exactly the same, okay? And let's say subject B, okay, we determined through a postural assessment, he has like upper cross and lower cross syndrome, which is very, very common. It's very common, especially with sedentary workers. So upper cross syndrome is basically when you have like the rounding of the shoulders, the head is protruding forward a little bit too much. And the lower cross syndrome is when you have like a bit varying degrees of excessive anterior pelvic tilt. So their butt's like really hiked up, and you can see their pelvis is very, very tilted, causing too much excessive curvature in the lower back, causing too much tension and tightness, for example, in their quadratus lumborum, or the lower back muscles, okay? And we determined also through a mechanical assessment that, let's just make it up, he has a end plate fracture in the L4, okay? And he's compression intolerant, where the other person for example, had, I think we mentioned, I'm just kind of making this stuff up off the back of my head. He had a posterior lateral disc bulge, I believe we said, in the L5, combined with an SI joint issue and possibly like a piriformis issue as well. That's contributing all to his pain. But subject B, which also said literally he had back pain, just had an end plate fracture we determined through like a mechanical assessment. And that was causing him to be compression intolerant, so load intolerant. So every time he put like a bar on his back, for example, past a certain amount of weight, he experienced pain. So the first person would experience pain, for example, when he's like lunging in his low back, but also when he has any kind of flexion. But the second person was okay in flexion, but seemed to be intolerant with any kind of axial loading on his back, okay? So just right there, let's kind of break that down. So you can see these two people, although on the surface they look like they have the same exact symptoms, actually, you know, the etiology or what's leading to those symptoms is completely different. And we haven't even touched on the belief system that led to these injuries, for example, that need to be addressed, because stuff like this usually happens over many, many years, deterioration of the joints or passive tissue, and then that leads to kind of surpassing the biological tipping point and creating clinical levels of pain, which both of these people reported that they are under. So naturally, what are these two subjects going to do? They're going to do what the bulk majority of people do, and that's go online. And that's go online and type in, let's say in this case, remedies for low back pain, or exercises for low back pain. Hopefully they don't type that one in, or stretches for low back pain or something like that, okay? And they're going to get a bunch of videos. They're going to get a bunch of videos and they're going to click on some random ones, usually the ones with the highest amount of views, okay? And then they're going to follow the advice there. And this is oftentimes where the problems happen, okay? And usually, most often, I've seen this again and again, like if they do experience any benefit from watching these kind of instructional videos completely out of context, it's very, very short-lived, and they must always kind of have recurrent episodes of pain, okay? Because remember, even if you're watching someone super credible, like in the back pain arena, for example, like Stuart McGill or Brian Carroll or Paul Chek, for example, the thing is, they are extremely knowledgeable, but they never like met you personally. Okay, they never met you personally, and they don't know like all this stuff that we mentioned in the background, okay? Obviously, if you hire them and then they take you through these assessments, or their assistants take you through these assessments, sure, they can find that out and give you an appropriate answer. But the problem is they never met you. And because, George, good to see you, Alvin, Rod, Victor, who else popping in? A few others in here, I kind of don't know how to tell. Thank you for jumping in. Hope you guys are all doing well. Always good to see you guys here. So because they never met you and they don't know you, just the advice they're giving is complete. It could be taken completely out of context. And if it does work for you, it's literally just because of dumb luck, and it's most often very short-lived. Because in this case, like most of the time, it's like, okay, it's usually behavior patterns and poor movement, poor understanding of spy hygiene, poor understanding of just health in general that leads to these type of injuries. And no re-education process has been administered to these people, even if they watch these videos. So the chances of injury is going to be extremely high, because most likely they don't even know what's causing their back pain, which is actually them, but they don't know what they're doing to themselves that's causing that most of the time, for example. So that's just one instance of, Ray, good to see you. That's just one instance of taking information completely out of context, okay? So it might be actually good information, but once again, because the influencer or YouTube personality or whatever has never actually met you, just the chances of taking that information completely out of context is extremely high. It could actually lead to injury oftentimes, okay? I forgot exactly what we mentioned in terms of their pain intolerances here for both subjects, but let's say with subject 2, you know, he's like traction intolerant. So actually like hanging on a bar or doing those upside down chairs or whatever actually causes him a tremendous amount of pain. So imagine if you went on YouTube and you saw a chiropractor saying like, oh, this subject, he had pain relief from mechanical attraction, okay? And this person will automatically think, well, if he had pain relief, he has back pain. But once again, that subject could have completely different pain triggers that are leading to his back pain and completely different tolerance levels than this person. So I can do it too. And they'll buy a traction table and they'll hang upside down and they'll go back to their upright position. All of a sudden, boom, like a tremendous amount of pain arises. And they're like, oh man, what happened? So that's just one instance. But let's say subject one actually did get relief from traction, okay? So he actually experienced relief from, let's say, doing a park bench decompression, which I would prefer far more than like one of those inversion tables, for example, okay? And he does get relief from just short bursts of traction that relieve some kind of compressed nerve and kind of give it a little bit more breathing space, you know, to help that nerve uninflame or deflame or whatever. So there you go. There's the unique differences that will most often never be caught, okay? Just watching videos completely out of context on YouTube. Oftentimes reading books as well. Unfortunately, it's like the author of a book just never met you, okay? And it's very hard. I've written 2 books already, and it's just very hard to encompass like everything in a book, but at the same time, keep it simple enough for the general audience to not be too bored and the book not to be like 900 or a couple thousand pages, which would actually what would be required to really encompass pretty much solving like even the most minor health issues, because there's so many unique, different little individual differences that need to be accounted for. And oftentimes if those little teeny details are just missed or overlooked, the person never gets better. And that's just how it is. So there's an example of just kind of searching online for back pain. Some red flags definitely that I would look for is if anyone says, even if they have a PhD, Chris, good to see you. Ray, good to see you as well. Even if they have a PhD or a doctor and they start saying things like, just do this one little trick, or just do this one little stretch, or this one little exercise, and all your back pain would go away. Like instantly stop following this person. They're bogus. They're most likely just trying to kind of get clicks on their videos, and because oftentimes you need to be kind of like controversial on social media to get attention and to get clicks, or you need to be like very, very simple and kind of almost like dumb down your message so much that it's kind of useless or harmful most of the time. So anytime like anyone literally says, not only with back pain, but literally anything, it could be like anxiety, fat gain, shoulder issues, whatever is going on. If anyone says, just take this one supplement, just do this one nutrition plan, just do this one workout that we happen to be selling and you can buy it here online without us even doing an assessment on you, et cetera, or just do this one stretch, just buy this one device and roll out your psoriasis or whatever and everything will go away. Like, stop following this person. They're not a credible source of information at all. And in fact, it could be like extremely harmful to continue to follow that person. Once again, and I see this often, even with like PhDs, even with MDs, just because they have these degrees, that doesn't mean they have your best interest in mind, okay? Especially if they're kind of selling a product on the back end of just saying, just do this one thing, you know, just take this one multivitamin protein shake and all your health issues will go away. Bogus. Totally bogus, because the human body, just use common sense here, it's a system of systems, okay? Even the most minor health problems, or even like body fat, for example, it's a byproduct, it's a symptom of like a myriad of things going on with most likely multiple systems within your body, okay, that are leading to that issue. And then you got the belief system also in the background that's kind of fueling all that behavior, that's causing all those issues. So the fact to say that like you just need to do this one little thing is very, very dumb, okay? So the second you hear that, just stop watching. Please try to find another channel. Please try to educate yourself. I'm a thorough believer in becoming your own mechanic, okay? It does take time for sure. You got to read a lot, you got to study a lot, you still got to hire mentors. I do that all the time, but it's just what needs to be done Because at the end of the day, also, no one's going to care about you as much as you care about you. And no one's going to know as much about you as you know about yourself as well. So oftentimes, if you just really do educate yourself, and it takes quite a bit of time and find the right mentors, you could oftentimes be a better health provider for yourself than your actual health provider, okay? That's just how it is. So that's what I believe strongly, and stuff of that sort. Also, as you educate yourself, you'll be able to know how to look for credible people, because when you don't know like literally anything about the subject, anyone can sound like very competent, very intelligent, et cetera, et cetera. They could be quoting studies oftentimes, and you could be like, well, they did their research, all this stuff, but it could be as far from the truth. And a lot of times, a lot of these, PhD guys, even guys without PhDs, I'm not bagging on just the academic guys, they're just like coffee shop type of guys. Tim, good to see you. Like, they sound very, very fancy, like just talking to them in the coffee shop. Oh, this is a good idea. But then when you actually try to apply their stuff in the real world, or when they try to apply their stuff in the world, it just doesn't pan out. It doesn't work, because they're just kind of just like talking, and that's it. They're just good at talking and sounding very intellectual. And I always say, with any health providers, I mean, the majority of health providers I know are just very unhealthy themselves, okay? Especially kind of like in the medical and nursing community. I mean, I've seen almost as much obesity, disease, mental and physical pain there as the people that are trying to help. And you see the same exact thing in like dietitian conventions. You go there and literally like almost, I'm hitting this thing all the time, literally like almost probably 70+% of the people there are just very overweight, and they just have masters in nutrition, they're registered dietitians, they've taken like a million courses. When you speak to them, they're like, wow, this person actually knows like a decent amount. But then when you look at them, their ability to apply that knowledge is lacking greatly. So they're just kind of really living through just ideas and just not able to apply it in the real world. And as Paul Chek would say, knowledge is not power. It really almost means nothing. Where you really get the benefit of from it is the application. So applied knowledge is power. That's where you really reap the benefits in the real world, okay? Through figuring out ways to apply the given knowledge realistically, sustainably, day to day, 7 days a week, if it needs to be, okay, in the real world, all right? That's where you apply it. And you look at a lot of these health professors, a lot of these MDs, a lot of head nurses, and they're not able to apply it. That means they haven't figured out how to be healthy. And if someone hasn't figured out how to take care of their own health, there is no way they're going to teach you how to do it, because they haven't figured it out themselves yet. It's like the blind leading the blind, okay? And this is probably 9 out of, unfortunately, like I don't know the exact number. I'm just saying this off the top of my head through observation. But unfortunately, this is probably the bulk majority of health providers, because also a lot of health providers are stuck in a symptom management, endless symptom management cycle of healthcare, which doesn't get rid of or cure anything. It just kind of manages your current symptoms. And like my friend Tor Pierre would say, you, instead of taking a rock out of your shoe that's causing you pain, you continue to walk with that rock inside of your shoe, but you take pain medications, okay? Just to numb the pain out. And then guess what? Your body habituates to the pain medication or whatever medication you're on. You got to take higher doses, then it becomes toxic and you start developing other symptoms. Then you have to take drugs for those symptoms, which then become toxic and develop other symptoms. And then you wonder why the bulk majority of Americans, by the time they're 40 or 50, are on a myriad of prescription drugs and looking the worst they've ever looked and feeling the worst they've ever felt, although they have all this advanced medicine at their hands. So clearly something isn't working. And the reason for that is you'll never be able to find health and happiness in a drug. Okay, even if it's prescribed by your doctor, it's still a drug. All right, you got to get to the etiology of what's causing any issue. And it does take more work, no doubt, but you're not most likely not going to get a solution doing this other way. Some minor exceptions to that rule. This is just my opinion, but that's most always how it works out. I must never see anyone just getting hooked on prescription drugs without making serious lifestyle changes and changes to their belief system that led to those problems. If that isn't changed, then just the problem, all those drugs are doing are basically just allowing you to be the dummy that led you to those problems to begin with for a little bit longer. But then once again, the side effects start kicking in. You got to take more drugs. It becomes more expensive. Toxic load increases, et cetera, and the person looks worse and feels worse year after year, but continues to keep buying into that symptom management model because oftentimes they're just too afraid to look in the mirror and admit that the person that is causing all their problems is themselves, which is super powerful in my opinion, because guess what? If you're causing all your own problems, you can stop causing all your own problems too, okay? And that's super powerful and very empowering. It does take work, it's not easy. In a couple of other videos, I in the past mentioned, how I overcame very severe social anxiety. Like doing something like this would be almost impossible for me to do like 15 years ago or sometime back then, okay? I would just be so like scared and so anxious that I wouldn't even be able to articulate like even the most simple of sentences, okay? And all the MDs wanted to do is throw just a myriad of drugs at me to help battle my anxiety, but I didn't do that, okay? It took me years, and it was very kind of, quote unquote, I perceived it as scary from time to time because just socializing was super scary for me in general. But it took many years of I took improv classes, had great improv teachers to help me overcome stage fright. I took acting classes, not because I wanted to be an actor, but because I wanted to, once again, overcome that kind of stage fright or that social fright, et cetera, et cetera. I read a bunch of books on not only just social anxiety, but generalized anxiety and various other anxiety disorders, et cetera, et cetera. I cleaned up my diet a lot, okay, which indirectly impacts your anxiety too. I took my gut health very seriously. Like I worked out, et cetera, et cetera. I forced myself to socialize a lot more and take on more kind of like leadership roles, which require more socializing, because I saw that as like a very like bottleneck to my experiences in life. Because if you're not able to communicate or articulate yourself in a social situation appropriately, oftentimes you'll just be drowned out by other voices or more people that are more assertive, for example. Harvey, good to see you. People that are more assertive, for example, okay? So your voice isn't ever gonna be heard, and you're just gonna kind of disappear and fizzle away and not be able to live out your core values as well as you would like, okay? So yeah, that's another thing. Another thing also, you have to remember that sometimes advice isn't just enough either, because a lot of times it's like, look, if I give you like a car manual and it has all the answers in there of how to construct the car, I bet you like 999 people out of 1,000 would still not be able to put the car together for one reason or another. It's like, okay, you have all the answers there, but why aren't you able to do it, okay? Because the answers and the knowledge isn't enough. You have to know, like, where are you sourcing the parts from? Are you getting legitimate parts that aren't gonna fall apart on you? Do you have like a garage space? Do you have all the tools? Do you have the motivation and time to actually put this car together? Do you have, do you know all the safety that needs to go into constructing a car and dealing with like a blowtorch, for example? Stuff of that sort. Do you even have the money to buy all those parts? I mean, you have all the answers right there in the book, okay? So clearly that should be enough. And that's the kind of mindset and mentality people go into with finding information online, okay? They go in there and they're like, I just need information. But information isn't enough. You need to know how to apply, first of all, where that information fits into the proper context, and then how to apply it with the appropriate intensity. Like a lot of times people ask me like, oh, like, what exercise should I do for, my glutes, for example? And I'll be like, what does it matter if I tell you which exercise? Let's say one of the best exercises you can probably do for your glutes is like, in my opinion, like a Bulgarian split squat, for example, like a single leg Bulgarian split squat. There are many other ones you can do, but so what? I just told you one of the best ones you can do, or a lunge, or a step up, or anything that requires a lot of hip flexion and extension. For example, you can get through the full range of motion, or anything that requires like a lot of balance would activate your glutes very, very quickly as well. So like any single leg work. Okay, so like I just gave you the answer, but do you know how many sets do you need to do per week? How many times a week do you need to do that exercise? How do you periodize that exercise through appropriate accumulation and intensification phases? Is that exercise right for you? Because one of these back pain patients, that might actually hurt them. Okay, is that exercise right for you given your injury history? There's so many other things, like what's your tempo? What's your rest intervals? What kind of rep ranges should you do? Okay, how could you structure your rep ranges throughout your accumulation 1 and intensification 1 phase? Then how should they be different during an accumulation 2 and an intensification 2 phase? See, it's like pointless for me just to give you that exercise. I just gave you the best exercise, but it's like literally useless because like you need to know how to apply it. You need to know how to structure it. How's your technique? Do you even have enough central nervous system control to be able to balance on one leg? Or is that exercise too advanced? Or maybe it's too easy. How do you progress and regress through that exercise? So many things to consider. Just with something as simple as like an exercise for a specific task. So you can imagine something more complicated, like dealing with like anxiety or depression or serious gut issues or, blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, whatever, you name it. So you can see how just on the surface level, information isn't enough. Context, being able to apply that information with the appropriate intensity and intention, those things are far more important. And unfortunately, you just don't know that stuff until you become an expert yourself, okay? Which goes back to oftentimes you just have to reach out and hire an expert. Another thing you can do is spend a couple of years just mastering the subject. Like whenever I want to know a lot about a subject, like here's what I do. I pick usually 2 to 3 books that I read a month on that subject. On top of that, I actually actively apply that knowledge as well to really know what works and doesn't work in the real world, because oftentimes it just doesn't translate effectively like in the real world in terms of what you read, even if that person that wrote the book applied it in the real world, but it was under his circumstance and it might have worked then, but your circumstance, like I mentioned, everyone's individually different. It's not going to work for you for one reason or another, for example, okay? And then I most always collaborate and reach out to other people in the field. And I most always hire a mentor just to kind of navigate me through a lot of the information. But usually I hire the mentor like already after a couple of months or like a couple of years of already doing that research myself, just to help kind of piece everything together and take me to the next level or fill in the gaps of like something I don't know that I'm having trouble figuring it out. But since they've been doing it for like 30, 40 years, for example, they've already figured that out and they can kind of fill in the gaps for you on your specific situation. So you're welcome to do that as well. Also, I'm huge into taking courses as well. I try to take like 2 to 3 continued education courses every single year related to what I'm specifically trying to study that year as well. So you could take that route of becoming your own mechanic, but you have to take it seriously and you have to invest a lot of time into learning all those details just to get the appropriate answer you're looking for, to find a complete resolution to whatever you're struggling with, whether it's excessive fat gain or whatever, blood pressure issues or cholesterol, whatever. Michael, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Let me cancel out this call here. Cholesterol issues or whatever you're trying to do. But just finding some random person on YouTube and listening to them is most often literally not going to do anything for you, because they just don't know you. Even if they're very credible, they don't know you. They don't know your specific situation, because everyone's specific situation is so unique. it's literally impossible to give advice. Like, for example, my assessments typically last with new clients like 2 to 3 hours minimum. And that's presuming they're kind of like relatively healthy. Maybe they have a few things going on, like a little bit of gut issues, high blood pressure, excessive body fat, or whatever. And that still takes like 2 to 3 hours just to thoroughly know what the person is going through, what they're struggling with, what's really holding them back, what are their limitations, what's their capacity and willingness, et cetera, to be able to create a complete program for them to have actual good streamlined results where they actually see results, and more important, where those results kind of last after the program, okay? And it takes, hey, what's up, Oscar? Not too sunny here. It's like super cold. It's like 20 degrees this morning during my workout. But all that stuff is important, and you're just not going to get that from even a credible YouTube personality. And a credible YouTube personality is very, very hard to find. I would say like one out of every 30 or 40 YouTube channels you find are actually like worth actually listening to and go beyond just being silly entertainment for the most part. And that's in the health fields, for example. And I've seen a lot of very popular doctors. They have hundreds of thousands of followers online, but just the information they're giving out is so bogus. And I just don't know how they do this. Like, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a very popular doctor that's prescribing. It's like so silly. He's like explaining how organic food is more expensive, where it's like beyond so stupid. I don't know if he actually doesn't even know this, or he knows it and he's kind of avoiding it. But basically, like I mentioned in a lot of other videos, you know, like an organic diet, it's a little bit more expensive these days, but according to my research, like 4 years ago or so, like a grocery store level organic 2,000 calorie a day diet is $12.50 or so a day, where a factory farm diet is $7.70 a day. Roy, good to see you. Mark, good to see you. Oscar as well. $7.70 a day. And so basically for an organic diet, 2,000 calories a day, you're looking at spending about like $4,000 a year. And he was saying this is too expensive. But dude, the average person in America, and this is just well known, you can find it anywhere online, is spending anywhere between $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses, such as alcohol, eating out with their coworkers at lunch, subscription services, jeans, whatever. And that's like $8,000 to $16,000 a year. And he's saying, and this guy has so many followers, it's ridiculous. And he used to be obese himself, okay? Which I kind of wonder, like, okay, well, how did you become obese then, you know, being like a medical professional? So he's saying like, oh, you know, like it's too expensive. Where in fact, how's $4,000 too expensive when the average person is spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses? Not even counting travel, for example, okay? There's a lot of people that tell me like, oh, you know, they can't afford an organic diet or coaching because it's too expensive. But then I see them on a trip a week later, spending about $4,000 for that week trip, and being totally okay with continuing to be obese, full of misery and disease. And so stuff of that sort, okay? And so his solution, get this, his solution was buying organic food is too expensive. So you should buy supplements instead, which ended up being like $150 to $200 a month. And that was his solution. You know? So you can see it's like total businessman move, like zero concern for your well-being. Just another like MD pushing symptom management approaches to health. Stuff of that sort. I can go into like a million reasons why a supplement form, Joel, a million reasons of why taking a supplement form of vitamins and minerals is going to be inferior to well-grown, properly grown supplements, properly grown vegetables, fruit, or even meat products. You can get a lot of vitamins and minerals, essential nutrients from meat products alone. But I'm not going to go into that in this video because it's out of context for this video. But just to show you, a lot of times, even if they're quote unquote credible and they have like a million degrees behind their name's like a thermostat, they just a lot of times don't have your best interests in mind. They're looking to make money, especially when they're these like supplements, like do this one quick thing, take this one quick supplement, and it's so magical, like all your problems will disappear. Oh, well, if that was the case, why are 9 out of 10 Americans these days full of obesity and disease, mental and physical pain, if it was that simple? Because it's not, and it's super stupid to believe that is. Also, like I feel the doctor didn't understand. He's like, well, grocery store nutrients, organic and the industrially grown crops are like nutritionally about the same. But little does he understand is oftentimes at the grocery store level, you get industrial organic, and they come from the same exact companies that actually grow the kind of factory farmed or industrial crops as well. And you can see them, they come from the same exact farms, just one is organic and one isn't, for instance. And if anything is sold at the grocery store level, it's from an industrial monocrop operation anyways. So you can't expect the nutrition content of that food to be great, okay? And oftentimes when food testing is done, they just test like organic stuff at the grocery store compared to non-organic stuff at the grocery store, but both things are industrially grown. So it's not a fair comparison. It's super stupid. There are a million other reasons, like for example, the crops you see at the grocery store are very old already. They're not picked when they're ripened, etc. That's where the nutrition goes into the crop. Anyways, out of topic, but my point being is, see, a lot of people are actually listening to this guy too. They're like, where do I order? Where do I order? And I'm looking at the comments section and it's like, dudes, half those people were like so obese. And they're looking for answers. And they're seeing these people in hopes of finding answers, but they're being totally misled. And it's so disheartening when you actually do know what it takes to become mentally and physically healthy. And it's most always never an easy path. It's just not. I'm going to admit to it. And I know I'm going to scare some people away, but look at it this way. It's not easy being full of obesity and disease, as well. Being, full of mental and physical pain. That's not easy. And you live with that every single day. And that's not easy either, okay? Some people might have some cognitive dissonance and justify it some way to themselves because they don't want to escape from the pain, or they just don't know how to, so they begin to justify that lifestyle as okay. It's not okay, and there are better answers out there, but it's most often not found through these silly quick fixes. It's just not, and it's disheartening to see such educated people using their titles to deceive the general public into buying their garbage or nonsense quick fix solutions. If their shit worked, why are so many people still full of disease, obesity, and mental and physical pain? I mean, there's a few metabolic studies on PubMed.gov, like 9 out of 10 Americans now are just metabolically unhealthy. Why is that the case if it's so easy? Okay, well, that should give you the answer because it's not. Okay, well, there are some other things I wanted to mention. I totally kind of basically spaced out and don't know what they are at the moment, but I think you guys get what I'm saying. Be very careful when you follow people online, not even excluding myself here, okay? Because they don't know you, and you'll most likely just take their information out of context. The only way it could really benefit you is by opening your eyes to possible, that doesn't mean it's appropriate for you, but possible different ways of looking at the problem that you would need to thoroughly investigate and research. Like I mentioned, read a couple books a month, go to PubMed.gov, read a bunch of studies. If you don't know how to read the studies, that's totally okay. It's very difficult. Then go on Upwork.com and hire some researchers from very knowledgeable people exist throughout the whole entire world that can do it at a good rate, and show them these studies. Pick like 3 or 4 different ones. Don't have them communicate with one another, and have them give you their input on these studies, and then determine, what's right for you, for example, or just learn how to read these studies yourself, although it might take a while, but then you can do it yourself. And the same thing, hire mentors, okay? You've been spending who knows how many thousands of dollars on travel and stupid jeans that you probably can't even fit into appropriately or look good in, but you're not okay with spending a few $1,000s on an expert in a health field to really help you with your health, which is by far, I don't care what your goal is in life, the most important thing, because how are you going to accomplish literally anything with things like having depression, having nagging low back pain, or any kind of physical issue or cancer? Like, how are you going to accomplish that stuff? You're not. Okay, how are you going to live a low quality life with whatever you accomplish if you're just constantly like full of obesity, disease, mental and physical pain? Who cares what your title is? You're a miserable person. How does that help you? How does that help people around you? You can only give as much love and energy as you have. And if you don't have that, that's going to negatively impact people around you that you do love and that love you, okay? And stuff of that sort. So, Marcus, good to see you. Jumped in a little bit late. We're just finishing. But this will be up in our group, and you're welcome to check it out again, okay? Joel, Roy, everyone, thank you for jumping in. It's great to see everyone. What's today? Friday. Hope everyone has a good weekend, okay? I had a good book recommendation, but shoot, I actually forgot it. I'm gonna post it in the group, okay? I found this one really good, like philosophical interpretation of a really good movie I watched way back in the day. And then I'll post it in the group. And Alvin, thank you. Okay, all right, guys, have a great one.